10 years ago, I just graduated my oldest daughter from high school. By that stage, I knew that she was ready for college in the sense that she had enough money, she'd won enough scholarships for college, and that she'd been able to get into all the colleges that she had applied for. However, I was still waiting to see how well she would cope at college. But 4 years before that, she was just starting high school. We had just moved from South Africa, and I had no idea how the American school system worked at all, let alone what she would need to do to get into college. And at that stage, she thought that Harvard sounded like a good idea. As it was, she didn't even apply to Harvard. But I had to start scrambling and try to figure out how to be sure that she would be ready to be able to get into some of the colleges she wanted to apply to and to be ready to cope with those colleges. I did a lot of reading and research and have continued to do so over the years. And as I've worked with different students and seen those who've succeeded in college, those who've struggled some, I have been able to figure out some of the things that will help your child to be successful at college and how to be sure that your child is prepared. Because I know I was wondering, was I going to be able to do this? What all did I need to do? And now that I'm about to graduate my youngest child, I can look back and hopefully share some of this with you. So now I'm going to transition to my slideshow. So the big question is, will your high schooler be ready for college or not? In this talk today, I'm going to be covering a number of things that hopefully will help you answer the question. We're going to look at what colleges are looking for, how to pay for college, what skills your child is going to need to get before college, and various other things. But before we get into all the detail, I want to say to you that if you have more questions, things I don't answer, or things I simply touch on and you want to know more, I do have a Facebook group that you're welcome to join called Homeschooling the College Bound Teen. The link to this and the link to anything else that I mention in this session will be on your handout. So don't worry to have to search for those. They will all be there. But in this Facebook group are many moms who have been there and can help you. So I do not know all the answers, but there are many in there that can actually point you in the right direction. In addition, I want to tell you about something that's coming in July. For the first time, Fund Academy, where I teach, is going to be offering a contest especially for homeschooled high schoolers. So it'll be rising 9th graders through rising 12th graders. And this will be trying to teach them exactly what I'm going to be going through today, the skills and everything else that they need to be college ready. I know as a mom, it's really hard to get your kid to do the things you know they need to do. So I'm going to try to help you to help them. The challenge is going to take them through various different assignments, and they can do as many or as few as they want, and they will get points for them. At the end of July, the students with the most points will win the prizes. However, there will be many levels of winning, so it's not just one winner, so your child doesn't have to think, well, I'm never going to get this, so I won't even try. There is going to be a small cost, just $5, because I've learned that if people don't actually pay something, they're not really invested in it and they won't do anything. However, every single student who gets to a certain level of points, and it won't be super difficult to get there, will get a $5 Target gift card back. So you really will just get your money back. And I'm hoping this will really help parents to get their students to do the things that I'm going to be telling you, because you can listen to all this. Some of these things you can make sure are in their curriculum, etc. But some of it needs their buy-in. And I know that rewards often work better than nagging. Well, in my house, they always work better than nagging. So I'm hoping that this contest will help you to get them to start to do what they need to do to be ready. So let's start with some good news. The good news is there is no one-size-fits-all solution to how to be ready and how to get into a college. This is good news. I know in some ways it's bad news. You want to have a list of do these 10 things and then you're going to get in the college of your dreams and you're going to be highly successful, etc. But the reality is that our children are all different and there are different paths for each of them. And that is the thing to hold on to. That really is good news. That your child does not have to be like their friend or the child next door or anyone else. the path that is good for one child is not good for another. And so as we're going through this, pick and choose the bits that apply to your child and implement those things. There is no specific thing that everybody has to do to get this right. So make it work for your family. And just to explain how different my children were, I'm just going to show you a little picture of each of them. This is my oldest, who survived me not really knowing what I was doing. She went to Bowler, to film school, and after that she did her master's at Claremont McKenna, and she is now at CU Boulder doing her PhD in media and communications, and she actually teaches for me and my online school. My second son, Jason, went to Stanford University and now works as a programmer at an app company in San Francisco. My third son, Daniel, went to NYU, where he started studying computer science, decided that they weren't really cutting edge there, switched to Romance languages, and eventually was so busy doing side hustles that the side hustles were the main hustle, and college didn't really feature anymore. My husband and I strongly suggested that he drop out before the money ran out. And so yes, I have a college dropout, and that's why I'm very sure that college isn't always the way that everyone has to go. And he has been very successful as an app programmer and is now living in New York and working for a startup. And my youngest, who's just graduating right now from high school, she's actually gone to public high school. She has done the IB program at our local school. She was lonely at home without her siblings, and she was homeschooled until then. She will be going to CU Boulder in the fall and actually will be with her older sister for the first time. Now, to start off, when we're looking at how is your child going to be ready for college, is the very important thing that they need to know the destination. And this is because I see a lot of parents going overkill, trying to prepare their child for college, but for a college their child is never going to attend. On the other hand, I see students who sometimes wake up in their senior year that they really want to go to one of the harder to get into the competitive colleges, and they realize they just haven't done what it takes to get there. So you need to stop and assess with your student, what are they looking for, where is their destination, so that you can plan the route to that destination. And say once you know the destination, as I said, just as you have to prepare for travel, you have to prepare for where you want to go. You need to sit down with your student and figure out what all those steps are going to be, what are the things they're going to need for what they want to eventually end up in life. And obviously it's not just college, but where they want to go with their career. So how do you figure this all out? Well, the first thing I strongly suggest is to start early. As I said, every year I discover a student or two of mine, because I teach the local co-op and I coach a homeschool Science Olympia team and Scholars Bowl team. And somewhere along the line, I'll discover students who suddenly think that they would really like to get into some competitive school or want to go to a career that they just have not got the correct prerequisites for. And it's really sad because many times I realize they had the ability to do it and they've just been going down the wrong path. So how do they actually figure out? How do you help your child figure out what they want to do? It is hard, and my children, it was only really for each of them as they got closer to their senior year, and in their senior year that they worked out exactly what they wanted to do. And even then they all changed somewhat as they actually got to college. The first thing I would suggest is electives. Don't just do the minimum number of electives. Let your child do as many electives as they can fit in. First of all, provide some fun, but secondly, it helps them to see where their interests are. To give you two examples, first of all, over the years, I've had two different girls actually who took my Python programming class who weren't expecting to be at all interested in coding. One of them, her brother was enrolled, and she watched what he was doing, walked past him in the house a few times, and eventually 2 weeks into the class, her mom emailed and said, please, could she join late? Then I had another girl who's just done my class this year, and her dad just really wanted her to learn to code, and he was enrolling her brothers and convinced her she needed to do it too, and she was a senior. Both of these girls have discovered that programming is their love. One is already working as a programmer, and the other one is about to go to college now to start a degree in coding, in programming. Now, if they'd never tried that, they would never have known. On the other hand, I have another student who really thought she wanted to be a film major. And she started doing an elective on the history of film and discovered she really wasn't interested in film at all. She switched to marketing, and now she's graduated college with a marketing degree and works in the marketing field. Secondly, encourage your kids to have hobbies. This is where you'll see, are they good at drawing? Are they good at photography? Just what do they like to do? You will start to see who they are as people, and they will start to find out. Sometimes hobbies will stay hobbies and they will never become their main interest, but it does start to set them in the path of the type of things they enjoy. Extracurricular is really important. This can take many different forms. This can be clubs, this could be it could be volunteer work, but get your kids involved. As they start doing something, they may find something else related to that, and they keep moving on and finding new things. But if they're sitting at home, they're just not going to find these things. Offer them a variety of extracurricular things to do, and allow them to drop as long as you haven't paid a lot of money. I always told my kids if I bought them an instrument, they had to learn to play that instrument. I wasn't going to suddenly get a new one. So I'm not suggesting they just jump around from thing to thing, but do let them stop if they realize they don't enjoy it, because that's one of the whole reasons you're trying to do extracurricular activities, is just to find their passions. Travel opens up a world of opportunity. Now, travel doesn't have to always be overseas, so if you can afford that, that is great, and it's not as expensive as you would think. But just travel around locally even, do road trips, go to the States around, just let them see the world. And obviously, both job shadowing and getting a job helps them to also discover what they do and don't like. And remember, it's just as important to find what they don't like as what they do like. So let's say now they have some idea of what they might want to study. Now they have to think about what type of college. College Board does have a tool that once they can think through all these things, helps them to start to narrow down, and I will put this in, it will be in the handout. It will help them to narrow down what colleges might meet these specifications. But start to ask your child what size college they think they'd like to go to. Some really want a small, intimate college. Others love the hustle and bustle of a huge college. Are they very attached to home and would struggle to be too far from you? Or like my children, do they want to go far away? How much can you afford? You need to sit down and have this discussion with your child so that they know how much they're going to have to raise, how much you can contribute, and that also will limit and change what they're going to be looking for in colleges. Again then, liberal arts, specialized. Elite, community college, there are so many different options. Just even things like weather. My oldest daughter knew she wanted to study film. She also knew she wanted to be in some kind of honor program, and she knew she didn't want to be cold. I know she's now in Colorado, but at the start she was in LA. And she knew she didn't want a very small college. So you just need to help your child start to think through it. And one of the things that does help is to visit colleges. Start visiting the colleges in your hometown. And then whenever you're traveling, if you're going to be near a college, even if they're not going to go on a college tour, just walk around. I just remember walking around UCLA. None of my children ever applied. And in fact, none of them really liked it. They didn't even enjoy the field just walking around it. Other times, like my youngest daughter went to visit my eldest daughter. My youngest had not considered CU Boulder at all. When she stepped onto that campus, she loved it. And that is now where she's going. So just let them start to get a feel for different colleges to see what they would enjoy. So let's say now your child knows their destination. They have some idea of what they want to study, some idea of the college or the type of college. They don't have to narrow down to one college. In fact, they should have a range of colleges, your reach colleges that they might not get into, down to the safe schools, which you know they will get into and can afford, and those in between. But you know the range that they're going to be looking at, and that then helps you to continue. And at this point, you need to find out what colleges want. Now, obviously, some colleges, you need to find out what they specifically are looking for, but there are also very general things that most colleges are looking for, and the first is academics. And of course, we need to start with test scores. I would strongly suggest that your children take both the ACT and the SAT, because some students are better at one than at the other. Let them take each of them at a fairly early stage, perhaps without even any prep at all, just to see, get a baseline. Do this in 9th or early in 10th grade, get a baseline idea of where they're struggling and how well they test, and then also see which of those two they do the best at, and then focus on the one that they do better at. SAT subject tests are not required very often. Just check and see if any of the colleges that your child is applying to might want them. There's still a few of the more competitive colleges. I know only one of my sons, I think, had to submit SAT subject test scores, so it's not something that is very likely, but do just check it out. AP exams. Now, your child does not have to do those, but if they're academically capable, it does provide a good way for someone to see that you're not just saying my child is amazing, or the co-op teacher thinks my child is really good, but you can now pit your child against all the other children, students in America who are taking AP. And so it is a way for colleges to be able to see, right, your child got a 4 on the US history exam. They have some idea of how capable they are of college material. Obviously, what I have not put in here is dual enrollment. I am personally not a huge fan of dual enrollment, but that is a route that many choose to go. Just try and do that at a 4-year college, not at a 2-year college. The 2-year colleges, the community colleges, are so different. You get great ones and not so great ones. In the colleges, you have good teachers that really are college level classes, and there are those that aren't. 2 of my children did each take, one of them took accounting and one took English at our local community college. Both of them were extremely underwhelmed by what they were taught. And both of them just rushed through it, didn't take anywhere close to the amount of time they would have taken had they done those subjects at home with me. So just do take those things into account when you are doing dual enrollment. Also, not all colleges will take dual enrollment credits, whereas AP, many more will take the AP results. So again, have a look at those. And that's why I said at the beginning, you need to know what you're aiming for. If your child is going to be going to your local state college and you know that they're happy with all the local community colleges, this is not a big issue. But I know, for instance, my niece, she went to Furman, and she'd already had dual enrollment and summer program classes from 2 different 4-year universities that Furman did not accept. So just take a good look into those things. And finally, just remember, you're not your test score. Not all children test well, and the college admissions officers do understand this. Don't worry if your child does not get 33 on the ACT, and if they don't get 5s on all the AP exams, that's okay. There are many other ways they're going to evaluate your child. You just need to find some way to show that my child is capable of the academic rigor of the college they want to go to. That's what you're aiming for. Obviously, also, sometimes those scores do help to get you scholarships. Some colleges do just literally give scholarships on score, so that is where it comes in as well. Now, some test resources. The ACT website has some resources for the ACT. We used to like using the Princeton review books. Khan Academy is a great place to go for extra math review. It's free and adaptive, so as your child moves through, it shows them what they need to see more of. I love vocabulary.com. You can get it as an app. It costs, I think, $1.99, and your child can just play that, and you can it's adaptive, and it shows them harder words as they get the words correct that they do, and it really helped my daughter to expand her vocabulary. And then for a book, Word Power Made Simple is an excellent one. If you can incorporate that into your homeschool English, I would strongly suggest that. And the vocab and the word power, these are important because if children don't actually know what the questions are meaning, especially obviously in the English portion of your ACT and the SAT, but even in your APs, it's going to be a problem. Also, if they're having to write the essay portion or if they're writing APs, using good vocabulary does help to get better scores. Now, GPAs. This is not as important with homeschoolers as it is in public or private school, because in those schools it's very relative. So they will know that some schools it's really hard to get a 4.0 GPA, and so students that get close to that, then they're really good. In other schools, if you don't have at least a 3.9, they'll know that your child isn't academically excellent. However, homeschooling, we're all doing our own thing. So your idea of what makes an A for English and mine might be different, and colleges know that. So they're going to look at other ways to evaluate your child. So I wouldn't get too hung up with the GPA. None of my 3 that I homeschooled all the way through high school, none of them had a perfect 4.0 GPA. Though my oldest daughter ended up with a perfect 4.0 GPA all the way through both her undergrad and her master's degree. So I was definitely a harsher teacher than her college lecturers. But I've heard a lot of parents get sort of hung up on, oh, should I count this as an honors class? I think my child's going above and beyond, or wanting to know, I know I teach both online and at a local co-op, and they'll say, is this an honors class? Because they want to weight it, they want to give it more points. The truth is that most colleges will ask for the unweighted GPA. That means you can't put the extra points on for honors, etc. And you're just going to have to give what they got out of a 4. And so I wouldn't worry. As I said, I didn't weight a single grade for my children. My kids did AP exams without actually taking any AP classes. I just taught whatever I wanted to, and then they would study for 2 weeks before for the AP exam and write the AP exam. And then we used the AP exams both to show that they were capable of college level work and also to get college credit. So there will just be a guideline for the colleges. You obviously don't want your child to have a 2.0 GPA, but don't worry if it's not perfect. It's not necessary. I love contests. They encourage my children to go above and beyond. Obviously, everybody's child is different. But contests also allow you to show colleges that your child can show up well against the school children in your area, your state, maybe even nationally. And so again, it's an objective way to say my child is ready for college, and it's a way for you to see if they're ready. I know I coach a science Olympiad team, and as we work with the students, we've been able to see those who struggle in different areas, and the moms have been able to see that too, and they've been able to work on the weaknesses, whether their child is very slow, whether the child doesn't read the questions carefully. All those things, as we're doing practice tests, we can see these problems and start to correct them. Contests also just teach you life skills and the fact you're not going to win everything. You learn to win, you learn to lose, and you learn to stretch yourselves. And I'm going to list on the handout a few of the contests that I particularly like and are probably accessible to you in your area. But you can also just look around. Things like math contests. The local colleges will generally have contests for high schoolers. I know a lot of our Scholars Bowl and Science Olympiad students have participated in local math contests, so look out for those too. And of course, it really helps if your child does manage to win at a state or even national level. That is going to look impressive and set them apart. Colleges are really big into the idea of intellectual curiosity. So what exactly does this mean? They want to know, does your child enjoy learning just for the sake of learning? Are they just intellectually curious? Now, you can't force your child to be. So this is something that is going to be there or not. But a child that likes to read a lot, many of the colleges asked me to give reading lists for my children, not just for what they had to do as part of their curriculum, but what did they read outside of their curriculum. Does your child like to invent things? That's cool too. Additional courses. My son, Daniel, did one of the first MOOCs, massive open online courses, which is now, it was offered through Stanford, and that's the guy that did it has now started up Udacity. And he did one on machine learning. Was it machine learning? Oh no, it was AI, it was artificial intelligence. And it was a real stretch for him, but he loved it and he kept up and he finished, and he had a certificate at the end for passing it. And there are now so many. There's edX, Coursera, and then you've just got shorter courses which are paid. Those you can often get free, but then you've also got things like Udemy and Lynda, all which offer courses in just about every topic you can imagine. And if your student does these not as an elective, but just over the summer, just to learn something fun, that looks impressive. Research, Again, here, if you're nearby a research university, if you're in a big city, there are often opportunities for students to actually work with local professors, or they could just be doing their own research and documenting what they're doing. Anything that they're doing to learn more and expand their horizons is the kind of thing that colleges are looking for. They're also looking to see what the extracurricular activities are. And here, I'm going to say, choose one or two that do in depth and possibly over their middle school years even, as well as their high school years. My youngest daughter, it's been Science Olympiad. She did that since she was 3rd grade and only missed 1 year at high school. And then since high school, she's been involved in theatre. Those have been her 2 big ones. And then the next one would be volunteering in the inner city. She's done that since she was middle school. She doesn't do it every week. She has just done it different projects over the years, but there's been one strand that's gone all the way through her middle and high school. I've also said do many and varied. Now, this is not a contradiction. Colleges do want to see that kids can really stick with something and really go deep with one, and you can't do that with more than a few. However, they also want to see your kid has got different interests. And for instance, again, taking my youngest daughter, she likes to ski. She only does that in the winter, and she gets to go a couple times depending on where we've gone for vacation. But she enjoys that. She also enjoys playing the guitar. She only took lessons for 1 year, but that's something else that she's done. And she loves photography. She started a photography club at one point. So those are things that your kid isn't doing hours and hours of every week, but they're doing it. You do want them to do some kind of sport, be involved in clubs. Again, they can just be a club that meets once a month. And then music, church choir, playing an instrument, being in band, any of those things. And of course, the arts, theatre, anything like that looks good. And they can all be done at varying different levels. Community service. I would say it's essential. First of all, I just think it's something that is good to teach your kids to give back. So on that level, without even looking at how it's good for college or anything else, it's just something I think it's great to encourage our kids to do. But when they start to look at what to do for community service, I would encourage you not just to think of something that's going to look good to colleges, but rather something your child will enjoy. Look at the fields that they're already in. Again, just to go back to my daughter, she's a good example. She loves theatre. So most of her volunteer opportunities have been revolved around the theatre. She went and helped a local middle school stage manage their musical production. I work with the Lego League team in the inner city, and she has helped them work on their presentation and their skits. She also worked with an ESL class over the summer this last year, and she just did 3 days where she went and she did review games using theatre type ideas to get them go over the words that they had used. So again, it was related to what she already enjoyed, and it wasn't a huge chore for her to do. Be sure to keep track of the hours. Start that in 9th grade. In the summer, before they go into 9th grade, start recording. You think you'll remember, they might think they remember. Believe me, it's really hard to get to your senior year and start to think, what was that I did in 9th grade? How many hours do you think I spent? It's difficult. So whatever they're doing, helping out in VBS, helping even if they're like mowing the yard for an elderly neighbor, anything like that, anything that is volunteer, keep track of it. Leadership is important. Colleges really do look for this. As homeschoolers, you may think it's harder to do. I would encourage you that something like 4-H, my older 3 and even my younger one, she was involved in it. Even the first year when she went to school, she did it, and then she got too busy with school activities. They have a lot of opportunities for leadership. It is a great organization. I heartily recommend you look into that. Any other clubs as well that they could be involved in. Scouts obviously would be another one that would give leadership opportunities, and your child can start things themselves. My one son started a strategy games club. He did it not just for homeschoolers but anybody in the area, and they would meet every week, once a week, either at my house or he started with a friend or at the friend's house, and they just organized it and advertised it and went for it, and that shows leadership. Obviously, starting your own business shows that as well. Anything that a child does that where they're taking the initiative and running with it themselves, make sure they are really doing it and it's not you. Summer. Summer is not just a time to kick back and relax. Yes, your children should do that. They are still kids. I am not saying make their summers super busy and awful, but they should be using their summers well. Each of my children has at some point had to write in a college essay what they've done over their past summer. Because sometimes you don't just write one main essay, but there's often like small, almost paragraphs that students have to write. Same has happened with community service, by the way. My daughter now has been applying to college. She had at least 2, and they might have been on the scholarships for the colleges, but where she had to write what was her favorite volunteer opportunity. Now, if she had nothing, she would be in trouble. It doesn't matter really what your child does for summer. You can see I've listed a number of different ideas here. Is that they do something that they can say, I did this, something that they will have good learning experiences from. And they just don't want to come to the end and all they've done is hung out at the pool and at the mall. That's not a good idea. Paying for college, as I said earlier, you do need to sit and have this discussion with your child. There are calculators to see about how much money they're likely to get from FAFSA, and then they need to figure out what colleges they can afford with that, or how they're going to find scholarships. Now, scholarships you can start applying for all through high school. In fact, even some for middle school. So they don't have to leave this to their senior year. Only one of mine actually listened and started getting scholarships early. So I hope you have better luck than I do. But they can also learn to save, depending on how much you're going to contribute. And obviously you may need to be saving too, but they can also start to work and put their money aside and start to look at the concept of loans. Do you really want that? And just start to think through the whole process. You want to start to think through this long before they set their heart on some super expensive school that you cannot afford. Where to find scholarships? I will give you some links in the handout. There are many online, and there are a lot of different scholarship search engines. You can also find a number of books. The clubs and societies, things like 4-H, Scouts. As a parent, you may be a Rotary member, and you don't have to be a member to apply for the Rotary ones. All of those are places where you can look to, and places of work as well. And one very good scholarship website that just helps you find, or not find so much find, that she does post a lot, but is howtowinscholarships.com. She has a really good book that I can recommend on how to go about standing out. And we use that, and I'm sure it's the reason why my third son particularly won a number of the scholarships that he did. How to win the scholarships? Well, first of all, community service is important. Most of the big scholarships, we're not talking about the ones that the actual colleges give, but just the external scholarships. Most of the big ones relate to community service. So if your child isn't doing community service, they're not going to get it. And they need to be doing something more meaningful than just showing up and helping at the local soup kitchen. Not to say they shouldn't be doing that. They can be doing that too, but they do need to be doing things that are showing some leadership, taking some ownership of what they're doing themselves. You do need decent grades that do not need a 4.0 GPA. They need that leadership opportunity. When you're picking scholarships, look for ones your child is suited to. Don't try for ones, don't get them to fill out ones that are so hard they'll never get it. I also try to find ones that had more than one winner, because it just gives your child a better chance. It's really hard if just one person is going to win and you spend hours and hours and you don't get it. Though my children have managed to win those too, I must say, even when I wasn't sure, but I thought they had a reasonable chance. Which comes to my question here is, how will you achieve this? And the answer, you need a parent-student team. The parent needs to be looking for these scholarships. The kids really don't have time to do it. You should be the one finding it. The student should be the one doing it. Don't do these scholarships for them. Don't write the essays. Don't even give them ideas. The people reading it will know. The student needs to write, as I said, and the parent will just check. You can go over it, say, oh, you've got grammar errors here. I don't understand what you're meaning. This is not well organized. But don't do it. Use technology to help you. Keep yourself organized. I used Google Sheets actually, and I put all the scholarships down there with the due dates and anything specific they needed, and shared that document with my child, and they would go through and keep up like that. So be very intentional and smart with the ones you choose. Don't get your kid to be writing hundreds of essays if they're not a really good essay writer. Just make sure that you go through and find the ones that are good for them to try. And there are a lot more out there than what you're going to imagine. Now, finally, skills you need for college and life. Public speaking, make sure your kid can do public speaking. Find a public speaking class. This is something that I don't think you can really just easily learn out of a book. Your kid needs to be practicing. 4-H has many great public speaking opportunities. I have watched kids improve just by going through the program and participating in their speech competition. They also need to learn interview skills. Find a place where they can learn these things. Make sure they have decent computer skills. I have a number of kids who will come into my high school classes who really don't have these skills. And it's okay because they've still got time to learn it. But if they're leaving school without these, it's a problem. They need to be good with looking and checking the emails. Colleges are going to send emails. They need to know how to find files, how to store their files, how to move their files around, just all those basics. They need to be able to work with documents, with slideshows, with spreadsheets, creating graphics and movies, because yes, colleges will sometimes ask you to do those things. They'll definitely have to do slideshows. They may need to create websites. And depending on what they're going to do, they may also need to be able to code, because nowadays coding is part of so many different degrees. My oldest daughter has had to use coding in her PhD, and yes, she is doing media and communications, and yet she's had to crunch her research data, and she's needed to use like a small programming, it's like a little I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's not like exactly a programming as such, but it's like I don't know how to explain this here, but it's a tool that she needs to have some basic coding skills to be able to use. So if they're doing anything in engineering, I would suggest they don't be struggling at university to try and learn to code and learn everything else at the same time. Let them go in with something, and Python is a good one to learn to start with so that they have some idea what they'll be doing. Social media. Make sure your children are smart about social media, that they're not posting stupid things, and that they realize that this is a way that the world can see them. I found this statistic, and you can see that many admissions counselors are checking social media profiles. If your child does not have social media, it's probably a good idea for them to get at least a LinkedIn profile, because that way colleges can see something about them, or if all their profiles are closed, they can get some sense about them, perhaps see a picture of them if they're looking at that, and that's a good site for them to be on. Make sure your child has good study and test taking skills. There is a Coursera course called Learning How to Learn, which I can highly recommend. They need to practice these skills. They need to, they need to know different ways of memorizing, different ways of getting the information they need to stick in their brains. Reading a page, I've seen this, I'll see students just reading the same page over and over again and thinking that's going to get the ideas into their head. No, they should always know how to, and this is beyond the scope of this course, but they need to know how to actually study properly. And the test-taking skills. Contests here, as I said, is a great one to see, do they have those test-taking skills? Time management, again, a biggie. Don't have time to go into all this. You need to be sure your kid knows how to actually juggle everything. Papers, do they know how to do research? Do they know how to do citations? Do they know how to write a good thesis statement? Do they know how not to plagiarize? I and all my other teachers at Funda Academy are constantly stunned by how almost every single week we will find students plagiarizing. They just will cut and paste. Sometimes they won't even rephrase it, or sometimes they rephrase it, but they don't understand that they can't just take a word or two out and just change a few words, that is still plagiarizing. So make sure your children actually understand this and understand that that is cheating and that they can't cheat, because it is so obvious. As I watch the children, it's just so easy to see when it's suddenly not their words anymore and they're using language far above their usual language. Believe me, you need to make sure they understand that this is a very important thing at colleges. At schools, they stress it, but of course, if your child hasn't been at a school, they haven't gone through all that. And colleges will not tolerate children who do not, who actually try to plagiarize. So make sure that these are skills that they do know and understand how to do. And then, of course, life skills. Do they know how to manage money? Get them a bank account now. Let them understand how a checkbook works, that they can't just write out checks unless there's actually money in their accounts. Do they know how to make appointments? Can they just call up and book an appointment at the doctor, the dentist? Do they know how to do those things? Do they know how to do their laundries? That they won't end up putting reds and whites together and turning all their laundry pink. Do they know basics like, when they're not feeling good? When is it they need to go to a doctor? When can they just self-medicate? Do they understand that they can't take certain medications together? Do they know basic cooking skills? These are all things that they're going to need to know when they leave home. So I've come to the end. I know I've covered a lot of material. I hope it has been helpful. If you want to follow me on social media, you can find me in all these places. Again, it will be in the handout. I want to remind you again that if you're wanting some help with getting your kids to do some of these things, do encourage them to sign up for our challenge in July. And we're going to be getting them to do many of these things, and they'll be able to pick and choose, so they don't have to do everything. And as I said, there should be prizes for everybody as long as they've done a certain amount of the assignments that we give. And we'd love to see you at in our Facebook group, and where we can perhaps help you, come alongside you and help you as you navigate these high school years. They can be very challenging, but it's also very rewarding. And looking back now, I've seen my kids get through college, even the one who dropped out the part where he did, and get into real life. And he and his brother both have real jobs now. And it is a very rewarding experience to look and say, I did it. I did help them. I prepared them for college. I prepared them for life. And it's a tough task, but it's one that you will get a lot of satisfaction from. And I encourage you just to keep going.